Good evening. Welcome to the 5-8, where we discuss each of the week's 5 most fucked up topics for 8 minutes, but not this week because we're not actually here. It's actually Tuesday morning. It's 7:30 a.m. Tuesday morning, and it's not Friday, so we have no idea actually what the fuck happened this week, do we?
We don't know. We don't know, but we know what we're drinking. I'm drinking coffee.
I am also drinking coffee.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We're in the same shirt and we didn't plan it. Right. And I'm in the kitchen. So this is my kitchen for everybody because everyone is asleep. And I thought, I don't know. I didn't want to be doing this.
I like the kitchen background, actually. It's a good backdrop.
Maybe we'll do this. Yeah.
That was your plan. Your plan was to have
set up the light. What, hon?
Your plan was to have the show in the kitchen as the backdrop.
Yeah, I have a spot for it where you can get everything, but I don't have the walnut countertops in yet.
Well, then forget that.
Fuck that spot.
Yeah.
So we're
not gonna
here.
Work.
We're here with cabinets,
We're here with the cabinets. Yeah.
Anyway, on the farm. Okay, so there are probably some evergreen things.
Yeah. Let's just pretend that we're actually live, right? On Friday night. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, I can't believe what the Supreme Court did.
Can you believe those fuckers?
What a bunch of fascist assholes. Really.
Horrible. Although in news, E. Jean Carroll is going to get her money.
Well, so theoretically,
he's never.
And it's the same thing with, Katie Fang, God bless her, did this wonderful lawsuit and won. And a judge has now ordered the DOJ to release the Epstein files. And I'm sure they're going to get right on that. I'm sure they're going to get right. I'm sure.
Yeah. Who's going to come after them if they don't? That's the thing. That's
always been the problem. That's always been the problem.
They finally figured it out. This is what Ann Coulter was trying to get Trump to get way back when. But he had Comey, and then he had Mueller, and then he had Jeff Sessions, who was just like, well, I don't know what's going on. And then, we didn't have his Roy Cohn, By the way, his Roy Cohn tendencies are out. This is evergreen.
Oh, that's evergreen. I mean, to be fair, some of these soccer guys and Jackson Dart, these are handsome men. They really are.
He can't stop talking about
other
men's looks and their
physique
parts, their physique. Thank you. That's the word.
Yeah, I think that's the word. And even himself, like I'm 6'3", to whatever he said in the bullshit medical,
Okay, whatever. I mean, the gold, it makes the gold, but that's just still so tacky. Anyway, what else is evergreen? The pool, the reflecting pool it's algae ridden, and
no, I think they'll probably get rid of the algae this week.
You think?
I don't know. Don't you have some pool guys up there that can go down there and fix the algae in the pool?
No labor.
Needs a little bit of shock and a filter. That's all.
I have a lot of manure, so just throw it in the reflecting pool. We'll grow some stuff in there. Turn it into a garden.
Oh my God.
What else? No one showed up. You know what? He's lying about his crowd size. That's another evergreen.
Oh,
he's lying about the crowd size again.
It's embarrassing. There's like no one there.
No one. I didn't know what was happening. I'm checked out, right? Getting this horse barn ready, but.
And it could have been like a really cool,
it could have been cool. How hard is it to have a fair? That's the easiest thing in the world.
I mean, if Kamala won, the inauguration would have been absolutely out of your mind epic. Like even bigger than Obama's. It would have been incredible.
I would still be there. Gobsmacked that there's a woman president, and so happy that I just would want to hold up a sign and show my support every single day.
Exactly. But instead,
no one wants anything to do with it. Well, also, to be fair to everybody, I hear that there's a huge stretch of water that is disease infested. And if you go anywhere near it, you're going to get arrested.
Oh,
maybe no one wanted to get arrested.
I guess so. Do you mean the reflecting pool or the Straits of Hormuz? Because I get them mixed up. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, another evergreen thing. The war in Iran is still ongoing. Everything is bullshit. And gas
No. It's Friday and the markets have closed. Peace in our time.
Oh, peace in our time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Decent archive. Oh no, right before the market. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tomorrow there'll be more war. That's right.
There's going to be more war for sure.
Yeah. For sure.
We'd definitely be talking about this deal that they have in Kazakhstan, where the Gums and Junior are going to make bank, and Lutnick, and all I can think of is Borat being like, very nice, like. Are you a Borat fan, by the way?
I love Borat. I like Sacha Baron Cohen. I know whatever. I don't understand the. I can't remember. There's so much controversy that everybody carries around with them now. So I find him brilliant. I'm a huge Andy Kaufman person, and so to me, when he showed up on the scene, I was like, oh my God, somebody's doing it. Yeah,
I saw that in the theater, like a lot of like stoned college kids, and it was really great. Like it's so funny. It's such a funny movie. The second one's funny too, but the first one is just.
Well, the second one got Rudy.
Yeah, it got
Is
Rudy.
Rudy still alive? This is how out of it I am. Is he still rolling around?
I don't care. Yeah, he is alive.
What is wrong with Mother Nature? Come on, Mother Nature.
Is it Mother Nature, or is it like even like Satan is like, I'm not ready for these fuckers. We need to have more space away from me before we let these guys in. It's bad enough I have to prepare for Kissinger. You know how long that took?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not good.
Oh, it's so pretty outside.
I think it's a nice day today.
Yeah, I think I got to get out there.
I don't know about that's another thing. Oh my God, it's so hot this week. So hot.
Oh, it's so hot.
How hot is it? It's so hot.
Oh, I can't take it.
I don't know. I don't have a joke for it.
That's an evergreen. I don't have a joke either.
Yeah.
What else?
I don't know.
Just corruption, scams.
Yeah, scam, corruption. Oh my God, Epstein. Nothing's happening.
Oh, Epstein. More Epstein. More horribleness. And oops, Jared Kushner's Mossad. Okay, let's get into it. Did I say it out loud? Oh well.
I think it's out on the internet now. It's out on the internet now. People are talking about it.
Holding on to that. How long have I been holding on to that?
Many years. Many years.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing tonight on this show is we're going to have partly a rerun, a replay of our interview with Alexandra Hall from a month or two ago, which we enjoyed.
Yes, we picked that one. I love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then Arthur, who fell asleep, woke up Sunday morning. So I teased it on Prevail on Tuesday, which is really Friday.
You. Yeah.
And but the full interview is going to be here in the second part of the show. So it's actually a long show tonight. It's like over 2 hours. Tonight.
It's live for you guys, taped for us. We're going to miss you, but I'm glad we did this. This is kind of fun. We should do this every time.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
We'll wear the same clothes again.
We're not planned to and do it anyway, because that's often, often what happens. So, all right. I guess we should get to it. But first, I think we have a little bit of media.
Oh, excellent.
JD Vance is a loser who makes everything a flop. Flopped in Iran, flopped with Orban, flopped in the donut shop. He's a fraud and a phony, and a puppet and a jerk. Not a hillbilly, eyeliner is silly, why he groped Erica Kirk. JD Vance, the crazy rants, Haitians don't eat cats. JD Vance, his Comic Sans, and Teal is zapping bats. JD Vance, there's a chance that he'll be 48. JD Vance, deviants, Pope should excommunicate. But we're stuck with JD Vance. 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 We're stuck with J.D. Vance. We're stuck with J.D. Vance.
It's just so weird.
It's so weird. Chunk killing it.
You guys got so weird. That was a reboot with update.
We have to. We're going to update this every 2 years until this guy goes away.
Okay, good. I'm excited about that.
J.D. Vance this week trying to couch-splain Christianity to the Pope. I mean, come on. What are you doing, buddy?
I like that couch-splain.
Couch-splaining. You like that? That's good.
do like that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Who do we got? I know we're ready.
We blew the surprise because her last name rhymes in our rhyme scheme.
I know.
It's already in the credits. She's a British former diplomat, not a former right. You know, she's British and a former diplomat with 30 years of experience in the Foreign Service. She's a columnist for Byline Times. She was the British ambassador to Georgia. And at one point on this very show, flew back from Tbilisi and came right live on the air to give us an update.
It's exciting.
Which is one of our best ever episodes. So Alex Hall, welcome back.
Oh, hey.
Welcome back.
Great to be here. My teenagers have finally gone off to their prom. I'm telling your listeners, I had 25 teenagers downstairs till about 10 minutes ago.
Okay, good. Perfect timing.
So this is a good side track. I like, you've got to be quiet. I'm doing something right now.
So I was going to ask you how you're doing, but I know how you're doing because I read your piece in Byline. Was it today, yesterday, whatever? I've lost all track of time. So we should get right to it because in the piece you write basically, why aren't people more angry about Trump? And you describe being out with people and going on an angry rant about how people should be more angry about this guy and the situation we're in. And I thought, if we can get her to recreate the rant, which we'll never be able to do, but tell us what set the scene. Tell us what you were talking about and specifically what brought this on.
Okay, so actually, I don't do diplomacy anymore, and I don't do podcasts anymore. I just do random expostulations, and so this is an expostulation, and I get really into it because there's so much to expostulate about. And the scene was that I was hosting a gathering of friends and family over Easter. And one of the guests very innocently asked me, not what did I think about what Donald Trump was saying about NATO allies and Britain in particular, but how did I feel about it? And something in me just exploded. It was the word feel. And for the next 10 minutes, to the sort of somewhat stunned reaction of everyone around the table at this gathering. Yeah, exactly. I'm the Easter Bunny. I said, how do I feel? I feel mad as hell. I am so angry at the insults, the disrespect, the blaming NATO, the blaming everybody but himself for the cock up in Iran, the consequences of this ill thought through venture. And anyway, I sort of got into it, and and then it was like, he's sweeping people off the streets, he's grabbing young kids, he's detaining tourists who are visiting, he's building triumphal arches, he's planning libraries with statues like he's Kim Jong-un of North Korea. He's so bullying, he's vain, he's arrogant, he's cruel, he's shallow, he's ignorant. But what really got under my skin is him launching this war in Iran without consultation, without thinking it through, having fired most of the national security experts, having dismantled the national security apparatus, having surrounded himself with cronies, and then when it goes wrong, having the nerve to blame NATO allies. So I was absolutely furious about that. Anyway, a guest at the event, very unwisely, and you could probably guess it was a man, and any men out there never say this. He said, Alex, you really need to be less emotional about these issues and more analytical. And you could have seen this explosion gathering, because I think we have a right to be angry. Yeah. I think we should be angry. Yeah. And if you're not angry, what the hell is wrong with you? You should be angry about rising fuel prices. You should be angry about the cost of living. You should be angry about the toxic poison in this politics. You should be angry about the damage that is being done to Americans at home and worldwide, to people who have nothing to do with Iran and who are suddenly finding that their fertilizer costs more, it's going to cost more to plant their crops, they can't get their fuel, they can't run their businesses, they can't import their raw materials. Everything is going to be more expensive. Airlines in Europe, we only have 6 weeks of jet fuel left. Airlines are beginning to cancel some of their flights. The ripple effect of this, and it's like, why aren't more people angry? And I'm an American myself, and I really have been struggling because I chose to become an American. I'm married to an American. I have so many friends. I believed in America. Yeah. The America I pledged allegiance to is not the America that is currently to the forefront here. And when I write, I realized that I was beginning to struggle with whether I should write about we need to be doing something or Americans, they need to be doing something. Mm-hmm. Was I defaulting back to feeling I didn't belong here? And that's been very unsettling for me, because I didn't become an American just out of convenience. I became an American because I was ready to embrace being an American. After 8 years of watching Little League Baseball, I was ready. And so most of my American friends, all of them, they didn't vote for Trump. They don't well, I think some of them did, but
yeah, some of them did.
Some of them did.
Obviously, some did, but most of my friends certainly didn't vote for him. I do have many Republican friends. Pretty much all of them are never Trumpers. They are embarrassed. They are horrified. But for example, when I went to the No Kings protest and I was like, who wants to come with me? I was like, oh, I don't really do politics, or, oh, well, I've got my sports activities, or my kids have got this. And it's like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take? And I think not enough Americans are angry. And I have so much respect for the people of Minneapolis who are spitting mad as hell. And they went out there and they faced down ICE and they got the administration to backtrack. But across our system, we're seeing too many people justify it or look the other way or say, well, maybe there's a case, or but the Democrats, or but Hunter Biden, oh, but, Kamala Harris, oh, but transgender, and it's like, no, that's not the issue. You can be absolutely critical of the Democrats. You can absolutely roll your eyes and be frustrated that they're not finding a way to register their protest. But that doesn't mean you should therefore say it's fine what's going on. So I'm mad as hell. And most people around the world are mad as hell.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand just how toxic America is becoming to the outside world. And that's a real shame.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to ask you about that, because it's kind of a good segue into the next thing. But a couple of things that you just said sparked some thoughts. First of all, whoever said that to you, if that gets said to you again, maybe point out that denial is not being analytical. It's just denial.
I mean, we're not in a rational world.
No, that's exactly right. This moment requires anger. It's he's making an argument for the whimper, and I want to make an argument for the roar, because there's one way we're told that the world ends, and I don't want the world to end. So we're not going to whimper out. So I appreciate all that. I'm sorry that it's like, you became an American. I have another friend that became an American right at this moment and is going through the same thing. Of just like, for 9 years, she fought to get her citizenship and did everything right and all that. And then it comes to her and she's like, are they going to, I have brown skin. What's going to happen to me? So it's a real nightmare. It's a real nightmare. On the note of what things that are changing, you have another article about this sort of impact of this Iranian war on the world order. That sort of, I don't know that we can come back. I know that maybe this was just a breaking point, or that it was the sort of the final thing that got everybody in our allies to wake up and be out of whatever denial if they were struggling with it. I mean, the Denmark thing, I think, Greenland woke people up. Really woke them up. That this is not America. Is not. It's forever different. But talk a little bit about what the impact of this war, even though we've only been in it, 6 weeks now, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, what the impact of it is on this sort of our world order as we understood it to be.
So thank you for the question. So with the same individual who suggested I was more analytical,
of course, there he is. Yeah,
continued to be quite tense because we continued on the topic of Iran, and I said everything is being broken right now, and in that sense, what's happening in Iran is worse than 9/11. And this individual went, what do you mean worse than a 9/11? Are you telling me that terrorist attacks on America where 3,000 people died and people were trying to kill us, that what we're doing, trying to dislodge a horrendous regime in Iran, and somehow that's worse? And it was totally missing the point. I said, no, that you're missing the point. After 9/11, actually the world came together. There was an instant rallying around America. Mm-hmm. The US invoked Article 5 of the NATO Charter. Allies rallied to America's support. Tony Blair flew over and said, we're shoulder to shoulder with the Americans. And at the UN, there were resolutions and there was solidarity, and countries around the world lowered their flags and played the Star-Spangled Banner in a sense of support and empathy for what America had gone through, and gave America a lot of leeway in how it conducted the war on terror. Even when bits of it were going very badly wrong, there was a sense we were under attack, this was an awful incident, and we do need to root out this terrorism. And when we went into the war in Iraq, yes, in hindsight, we can all see so many mistakes that were made, and there wasn't an explicit UN Security Council resolution for the final moment of the attack on Iraq. But to be fair, the Bush administration did rally a coalition of allies. They did take it to the UN. They did try to make a case to the UN. And there was a legitimate argument. There was a case to be made. Even if you don't agree with the case, you could imagine a case being made. But what's happened with Iran is utterly the opposite. It has split the alliance. Nobody has been willing to back the US in this operation. There was no consultation. There was no lead-in. Most people feel the US and Israel acted precipitately without considering the wider ramifications, without caring about the wider consequences, without calculating the costs and benefits, and without having prepared properly. And so what's happening is now Trump, he's sort of attacking allies. He's unbelievably rude to NATO and other allies around the world. And it is forcing more and more countries away from America. There was no attempt to rally support at the UN Security Council. And the UN Security Council doesn't work perfectly, but it's still a forum for bringing together and trying to debate these issues and making these cases. And when China and Russia veto resolutions, fine, it's on them. We know that they are authoritarian regimes. So maybe the resolution doesn't get passed because Russia and China veto it. But there's a certain moral authority if you get the rest of the Security Council around you or the General Assembly. But they don't care about any of those norms. They were in a negotiation with the Iranians when they decided to launch the attack.
Yeah.
So who's going to trust those negotiating processes again? So there's no way the UN comes back from this. I don't think there's any way NATO comes back from this. I don't think there's a way the UK-US relationship comes back from this. I don't think America's moral standing has been seriously damaged. I think its leadership has been really damaged because this administration just acts too erratically, too inconsistently, too violently, and without any principles or values underpinning it for others to want to follow them. So that sort of Pax Americana that's kept the world not entirely peaceful, but relatively stable since World War II, that's gone. America is ripping up climate change accords. And if America's not vested in it, it gives an opt-out for other countries. If America's not vested in the UN Human Rights Conventions and the UN norms on non-aggression, it gives an opt-out for other countries who are not vested in it. So America's been the anchor of the world order the last 60 or 70 years. And it's busy destroying that world order. And it's busy abandoning the values that once underpinned that order. And this administration, I mean, they made a case originally, well, we're pursuing regime change and we are there to support the Iranian people. We saw what happened in Venezuela. They got rid of one dictator and they're just doing trade with the successor in Venezuela. It's not a democracy there.
No, it's the same. It's the same party. It's the same ticket.
Exactly. So, and I have absolutely no doubt that if he can come to some transactional arrangement with the existing Iranian regime, he'll do it.
Well, so that's where he's been consistent, right? It's consistent as a criminal, as a crime family, a crime syndicate running the nation. Yeah. So that all of that has been consistent beyond all measure.
There's one more. I'm sorry, there was one more I have to mention. The thing that I think many of us were scared about when he gave this atrocious, shattering post about threatening civilization.
Wiping out a civilization, yeah.
And, to hear Vance and others going, oh, well, that's just, Trump being Trump, or, that's just a negotiating tactic. It's like, no, I'm sorry. If you're the leader of the free world, you have to have some moral authority. It's absolutely unacceptable to say that. And many of us, I mean, we always hoped that Trump would back down because the consequences were so huge. But I think Trump is the guy who may cross the nuclear taboo.
He wants to blow things up with the nuke so badly. Oh, yeah.
So erratic. He is so bombastic.
Yeah.
He's so consumed with his own legacy.
Yeah.
If he feels he's dying, he'll be like, you know what, I'm going to do it. He
wants to watch it go off. I don't know if it's even feel he's dying. He really is obsessed with it, and he wants to watch it go off. There's a sadism inside of him. He wants to see it, and everybody. That's the other thing to kind of come to terms with. It's not dismiss him, as clownish and as idiotic and dementia, blah blah blah. No, this is an evil force, and he wants it. He's been talking about it. He was talking about it in his first term. He wanted to throw nukes up into the hurricanes. Remember that? He just wants to launch a nuke. He wants to watch it. He wants to see it go. He wants to see that level of destruction. That's what
they couch it in this sort of ideologically zealous language. And if you want me to rant a little bit, it nauseates me to the core to see these sanctimonious, pious bigots who claim to be Christians laying hands on Donald Trump and having a moment.
Oh God, yeah.
I want to vomit when I see that, because there is nothing about his character or his behavior which has anything to do with my understanding of Christianity whatsoever. And then they have the nerve, the gall. I see it's whole, then gall next. Then they have the gall to claim to be lecturing. Pope Leo really needs to brush up on his theology. And they are couching this war in sort of religious mumbo jumbo. And it's like, I thought you disdained the Afghan Taliban and the Iranians as religious zealots. And sometimes you sound, just like them.
I think it's crazy.
By the way.
I'm sorry?
They also have a pretty awful attitude towards women, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's the prerequisite.
Yeah. In HR, we call it a BFOQ, bona fide occupational qualification. Oh, you have rape allegations? Great. You could be Secretary of Defense, but let's change it to Secretary of War, though.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
Secretary of Just War.
That's very intentional, though. So to me, as someone who looks at the propaganda and read the manuals and knows the playbooks, and that's whether I think the mistake is sort of going into this conversation of like, okay, why are they doing this religious stuff? And, oh, it's a Pulp Fiction thing. And that's all of it is very, very intentional. This Baal figure, which is showing up, right? Not just in the Iranian propaganda, but in the propaganda that Donald Trump is putting out from the White House. That's one of, I guarantee you, that's one of Peter Thiel's boys in there who's fascinated with Baal and is trying to work it in there. It's very difficult for people to wrap their minds around the intentionality of this, because we think, who would do this? There must be something wrong, or blah, blah, blah. No, these people know exactly what they're doing. They're doing exactly what they intend to do, what they're told to do, what they're instructed to do. And the people instructing them know exactly the intent of it. This is they're radicalizing people. They're radicalizing. They're hardening the base. They're pushing every limit. They're forcing it's whether it's instinctual to get other people to do this, because Donald has those instincts like a great white shark. He's got predator instincts. Or if it's something that he understands is coming out of the playbooks from foreign intelligence services to get other people, push other people's boundaries and use your position of power, which is what he does, so that they have to stick by you. And Bibi did this. This is how Bibi rose to power and stayed in power. For people to stick by you, they're so fused, their identity and their own power structure so fused to you that they cannot go against you. Right? Göring could not go against Hitler. He couldn't do it. And that's what sent him away. In the end, that's what got him. They can't do it. So the more he pushes all of this, the Republicans around him, the more submissive they become. It's a dominance tactic. These people know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And so then we have to then come to grips with, oh shit, this is all really intentional. This chaos, this destruction, this bloodshed, right? This nihilism. It's in this the graft, which is off the charts, right? This is all very intentional, very orchestrated. They wrote about it in Project 2025. Nobody bothered to read it. They wrote about it to destroy the nation as we understood it to be, and everything that was built, and do the myth building into whatever it is that they need to. They can retain power and continue to take all the resources of this great nation for themselves. That's it. It's that simple. So I think it's just, if we could get people to just speak plainly about that, right? You were talking about how frustrating it is that the news, right? For you, having this experience of like, why aren't people just being straight in legacy media and in the news and covering this and calling this stuff what it is, right? Why is there all this, both sides of them and all this kind of stuff? And after 10 years, you would think that our own media figures would have something that they could do differently, knowing the result that they get. And I don't know, people are stuck. They're stuck in a loop. They're just stuck in a loop.
I mean, so I got some pushback from my article from a couple of people who said, don't blame us. We didn't vote for him and we are mad as hell. And I think for many people, there's a sense of helplessness and frustration because the courts are trying to rein in this administration and they just bulldoze through it. And Congress is not doing its job, and Congress is held by the Republicans. And all it would take is for 2 or 3 senators to cross the floor, and all of this could be stopped. And they are not doing their job.
They can't do it. The Republicans will never, ever, 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 ever do it. Everyone needs to give up on that. They're submissive.
So what are ordinary people supposed to do when their elected leaders are derelict in their responsibilities? And then you don't have, on the Democrat side, for whatever reason, there's lots of smart individual people, but they have not found the right way to take this on. They're worried about being accused of being soft on immigration, or they're worried about being accused of, supporting the Iranian regime, or they're worried about being unpatriotic, and so they keep being on the defensive, and they haven't found a way to articulate it. And then you have in the media, I still don't understand it. I mean, I read the Wall Street Journal because I think the quality of writing is very good. And they are pretty critical of Donald Trump. They've not shied away from being critical of Donald Trump, but they still couch it in terms of, evidence suggests that tariff policy has had negative consequences for business leaders, or, Trump announces that the Straits of Hormuz are open. Iran is so far challenging that position. And it's just sort of reporting it factually. And it's not actually saying, these are just a pack of lies. Our president is a serial liar.
Now,
I think that
it's corruption. And
it's corruption.
They had a picture of, the Commission on Fine Arts looks at a picture of the absolutely grotesque triumphal arch, which they have recently approved. Why aren't they calling this out as like Kim Jong-un like levels of hatchet dictatorial behavior?
It's literally a Nazi design, so we could even go for the Hitler thing accurately.
They still sort of both side it, and
I think,
and so yes, there are many Americans who are angry. There are those who are off balance. There are those who are just worrying about keeping food on the table for their kids. There are those who've decided to collude. Yes, Trump's personal favorability ratings are falling, but it's like there's still 36% of American voters say they support him. I can't wrap my head around that.
I don't think any of us
wrap my head around that.
I don't think any of us can.
Can you not see it?
Well, here's the thing, Alex. Here's the thing. So, especially when it comes to our media here and the parties, right? And the Democrats. Okay, we can call them out. It took one bad moment in a debate and Joe Biden was gone.
Yeah.
So there was no both sidesing then. There was no couching then. There were knives that came out. Nancy Pelosi plunging it right in his back. There was no rallying around our guy because the stakes were so high. We couldn't let that happen. There wasn't that. And on it didn't matter what news program you were on, whatever you want to call. It was the big, that to me was like, and I have been saying for years, we have a good friend of the show, Melissa Peltier, who's been saying there's no liberal media. That is the biggest lie ever. It's like, it's very conservative. It's all owned by these Republicans. They're all in it for their tax breaks. That was the final falling of the veil of that. Gone. Because there wasn't anybody who showed up except me and Greg and said, what the fuck is this? We rally around this guy.
There was at least 5 or 6 other people but when you say conservative media, it also this gets to the question also that also applies to the industry as a whole. Not politically conservative, but slow to change. There is no template for how to cover Trump. There is no, in the history of the country, we've never had a guy like this. And individual reporters can say we should be doing this. Individual editors can say, but the reality of how these places work, having worked at AP and gone to the news meetings and seen this firsthand, everything is so slow. It's like a fucking ocean liner going really slowly through the Straits of Hormuz, right? And
well, they all turned around. They all turned around today, Greg.
They did, but it took time.
Open, they all turned around.
That's not justifying it. It's just an explanation. It's very, very hard to change the culture of the newsrooms, and also the job of the reporting especially on the fucking TV shows, which are all awful. They're all awful. They're just terrible, all of them. Just the same shit over and over and over on a loop all day long. It's stupid and boring, but the job is news. It's like, what happened today? Here's the 3 things that happened today. Tomorrow, Trump has done 27 other horrible things, and they sort of have to report on the stuff that's happening in real time. So it's challenging just by the template of the news itself is inadequate.
It had a decade.
I know. I'm not justifying it. Okay. I'm explaining it. I'm explaining it. It's not just that the legacy media is owned by 5 Republican assholes. That's a very strong part of it. But we've talked about this before. Look at Watergate. Everyone points back at Watergate, right? Watergate, you had to have 2 really good reporters who were doing the story. You had to have the editor above them who supported them. You had to have the editor, Bradley, when they got in trouble from the Nixon White House, standing by them. And you had to have the publisher, Kay Graham, saying, okay, I trust you, do this thing. All of those things had to happen in order for this one story, this one moment in journalism that's supposed to be this shining great moment. Those are lucky breaks. That's an anomaly. That's all that is. The rest of the media it's just ain't like that in these big things, and it's very annoying.
We have a very similar problem in the UK with the Brexit debate, where the media were like they didn't want to appear slanted. So if there were 100 economists who thought Brexit was a bad idea, you still had to find one economist to say it's a good idea so that we can have a debate on the pros and cons. But all the economists thought it was a bad idea, and they would find the one or the two because we had to be balanced. And I think your point is right. I think
but it's not balanced.
They're worried about losing access. They're worried about losing commercials. They're worried about getting bullied by Donald Trump and then advertisers backing away or them losing readership. And then so many of them have been taken over by the tech bros. And this is, it's all interlinked, which is why I agree with you, Stephanie, about there is some real intent behind this. Yeah. There are people making a lot of money here.
Oh, yeah.
Every time an environmental regulation is removed, a car safety regulation is removed, a consumer safety regulation is removed, medicine safety regulations are removed, somebody is making money from that. And they are giving a lot of money. Some of them own the media, some of them own the politicians. The politicians want to get elected. In the UK, the scales dropped from my eyes in sort of 2020 when I sort of saw the circumstances that led to Brexit, the sort of influx of foreign money, the campaigning by right-wing think tanks, and this sort of collusion between the press, the palace, because in our country, in my former country, the royal family are part of this pot. Mm-hmm. The royal family, our government, and the press would collude. The royal family would pose for pictures and provide great copy for newspapers. The newspapers would soft peddle negative stories about the royal family. And number 10 in the government would get media focusing on lovely pictures of the royal family and not on what was going on in government. And then the government would give the royal family their annual budget for the year. There was a kind of a convenient nexus. And I think that's true here as well. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Sure. I'll donate to your political campaign. You'll support the watering down of that regulation. And ordinary Americans, here's something I'm going to rant about. Donald Trump has coarsened the political debate here to a degree that is simply astonishing. Yesterday, it beggars belief that this would have happened 10 years ago. The governor of Mississippi put out a tweet saying, the UK is a useless partner within NATO. And as they say over there, salam alaikum, implying that we're a Muslim state, which of course they're constantly implying that we're the UK is about to fall subject to Sharia law and everything. It's a complete nonsense. But it was so offensive. And the Mississippi governor was citing a report saying that the average income in the UK was now lower than Mississippi, the poorest state in the United States. So one, he was insulting us. And then secondly, it's like, okay, average income is lower. Median income in the UK is higher than in the US. We have no gun. We have best gun rate, we have better public education, we have better healthcare, we can have affordable healthcare, we have better maternal services, better childcare services, better road safety, and we don't have school shootings. Number of school shootings in the UK last year? 0. Number in Mississippi? 22. And there's the governor of Mississippi trolling an ally. And that's the Trump effect.
Yeah.
Of this just hideous trolling. It's so offensive. And so, yes, people in the States may be buying it, but as I'm sure your listeners are aware, JD Vance's, support for Viktor Orban in Hungary did not work.
It didn't work.
The attacks on the Pope have forced the Italian Prime Minister to distance herself.
She's been great about this, right? Is it just me, or is she's? I seem to detect like a change in her. She's like, I'm not. Did you see the clip of her with Macron, where Macron's trying to do the French thing, and she's like, "Shake my hand, motherfucker! Don't put your arm around me. Shake my hand." Like,
there's those men for you, always leaning in for the kiss.
It's
and then you've got Marine Le Pen in France, and the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, and even Nigel Farage, the absolute snake oil salesman salesman.
I think it's just snake oil. I don't know that. He seems to be a human incarnation of the oil itself. Just as slimy as they come.
So, and I don't think people understand. Well, I mean, obviously, I can see in the comments people get it here, but I mean, the depth of anger and anti-American sentiment, and people understand it's not all Americans, of course. There's sort of a legacy of affection for America, particularly in the UK, that shared wartime experience, the sort of Churchill, Reagan, Thatcher. There's that, we love America, but nevertheless, people really hate America right now. And I don't know if it's going to affect the World Cup. I don't know if it's going to affect the Olympics. But I have friends who say, I'm just not going to visit anymore. Why take the risk? I don't want my social media searched when I land in the airport. I don't want to be pulled aside for questioning by ICE. I don't want to have this hostile reception. And I'd rather spend my money elsewhere. And it's having a real effect. And I
was driving, I live up close to the northern border, New York and Canada, and in a resort area. And it's all European and Canadian, a lot of Canadians that support the economy here, in the tourism side of things. And I saw a guy with Canadian plates, like at the rest stop. I almost hugged him. I was like, I said, and I said, I'm so sorry for us right now. He's like, it's okay. We come here every year. We have a place here. We love it. I'm like, oh, thank you for coming, because, we need it. We need our friends and neighbors. We need them.
When my British friends sort of go, oh, I don't know how you can live there, and it must be awful. And I go, no. I'm not sort of walking down the street dodging bullets and sort of hordes of, my kids aren't literally in body armor.
They're at the prom.
It's a very nice place to live. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And I'm surrounded by a nice community. But, you can only really have peace of mind if you unsee or pretend not to know what's happening in the areas where ICE still is operating. Or you pretend you don't know that America has the highest prison population in the world, or you don't know that people are being detained in these awful conditions of ICE, and you pretend you don't know a lot of this underside. And that's corrosive to the soul. I don't want to not know. I don't want to sort of be in this little privileged middle-class white bubble where I can pretend, well, I'm all right, Jack. And so I think that's the sort of unsettling thing. You could still live in your suburb and sort of pretend to yourself that everything is all right. But I think on Iran, they're controlling the narrative on so many issues in the US, but on Iran, they can't control what Iran does. And they can't. and it's awful because I feel there is a sort of danger where some people are almost willing Iran to win, and they're certainly laughing at the Lego memes that you were referring about.
Yeah.
Because we sort of kind of want Trump to get a bloody nose, but I don't support the Iranian regime.
No, it's a terror regime. It's the worst regime.
You know, I don't support them, and the poor Iranian people are in an even worse situation now if we hadn't intervened at all. But Trump can't control that narrative entirely, and so this is the one that I think in my article I said, you know, could Iran be the thing that actually ends up sort of breaking this? Because, you know, despite the fact that he's declared victory several different times, we don't know where this is heading. And the Straits of Hormuz, you were saying the ships are being turned back. I mean, it's not returning to free flow of oil.
No.
The global repercussions of this are very severe. And people, this is on Trump. You really can't blame this on Biden or Obama or Hillary Clinton or God.
You can't even blame it on
blame it on Epstein, I suppose.
You can blame it on Epstein.
Yeah, it's Epstein's fault.
Yes.
It's all Epstein.
It actually is. Yeah.
I don't know. Things are going to have to get really, really, really bad, meaning people are going to have to be affected personally by it in order to wake people up.
Which the gas prices are doing.
But if the straits are really closed off for an extended period of time, we're going to have shortages in a lot of things, including food, including medicine, you know, things that people need to live, that they're going to be like, oh shit, wait, what? And it's going to be bad. But on the other hand, we literally had a plague. We had a plague, and that didn't do it. So I don't know that it can be done. You know.
So my last thought. There was that picture. I'm happy to come back and rant away another time. You know, my sort of monthly expostulation. But there was that visit to the White House by this elderly lady who delivered a McDonald's.
DoorDash.
To Donald Trump. And she said, because I'm so grateful to you because you lifted taxes on tips. I've been able to save money for my husband's cancer treatment. And all of us who live in Europe were like, why are you fucking having to pay for that cancer treatment?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that healthcare so unaffordable? Why don't you have a public health safety net? You shouldn't need to be that. For you to be groveling at the feet of the man who heads a party who does not support what they call socialized healthcare. Healthcare should be a basic, you know, emergency care should be provided.
Right, yeah.
And
that was so sad.
If your tax dollars can't do that for you,
it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that, because that woman is a total chaos actor person who was just there. So that whole thing was scripted in advance, and that's what they came up with. That was a narrative that they all sat around at a table and approved and thought it would be a good idea.
Well, it reminded me of the Kremlin, of Putin. You know how there's always an old woman with a scarf over her head that shows up and says, "Oh, Mr. Putin, you saved us," you know, yeah, and because it's like, and he wants the old, you know, the grandmother figure is so important.
The babushka.
The babushka. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, he's babushka-ing it. What is happening with Donald? But, you know, it's the playbook.
On the other hand, he did have to get his McDonald's. So, you know, in the end, he wins. So,
but then, so life expectancy in the US, it's one of the only developed countries in the world where life expectancy is going down. Yeah. And then again, you know, these sort of nutcase Republicans. I mean, there are still nice Republicans who are just sort of in a mess right now, but the nutcase Republicans for years have been banging on about there's too many single girl mothers and too many young women having babies out of wedlock. Now we're getting statistics that the population rate is going down. They're like, oh my God, these selfish women, they're not having enough babies. And women need to start having babies at an earlier age, and they're all being too selfish. And it's like, make your mind up. Do you want us to have babies, or do you not want us to have babies? Or do you want us to have babies and then give us no support for looking after them once they've popped out? I mean,
yes, that's it. They want that. That is what they want. That's what they want. That's what they want.
Then the other thing about the babushka at the White House was then Trump asks her, what about all this transgender stuff? And she's like, I'm not actually really here. I don't have an opinion on that. I'm just here to talk about tax on tips. It's like, the transgender stuff. I mean, it's just madness. Anytime there's a bait and switch, yeah, but Hunter Biden, yeah, but the laptop, yeah, but transgender, men and girls sports. It's like, really? Yeah, war in Iran, yeah, rising prices, yeah, detention centers, I feel like those are somewhat more important. So, yeah.
No tax on tips, though. I mean, gotta hand it to him.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful for my son who busses tables. That's good.
So, Alex, this has been so fun. Please come back soon, because we like when you come on here and rant, because it's also we like having your experience in the ranting sphere, but also because you're a diplomat, we like giving you the opportunity to be not diplomatic.
I'm a freed diplomat.
You're a freed diplomat.
I used to be sort of kept in my cage, and it's like I'm really very undiplomatic.
We want to hear about the next dinner party with this guy too. You have to come back after he's there, after he comes back, and we got to hear about him, because I'm sure what's happening is he's in the stock. I bet he's someone who's in the stock market quite heavily, and so he's looking at everything looks great to him.
No,
so we'll see what happens.
He's a good person, otherwise he wouldn't be a friend. So.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
But we do need an update. You need to have another party and then come back on.
Excellent. Alex, thanks again for coming on, and enjoy the post-prom fun at your house.
Oh, by the way, when I give parties, Donald Trump's ballroom, I don't need a bunker and metal detectors and all the stuff in his ballroom. It's like, what is that? What kind of party is he planning? Anyway, sorry, I need to go. Goodbye. Thank you to everybody. I'm going to go and see what damage is being done by the teenagers who are about to come.
Okay. Alex, bye.
All right.
Bye, Alex. Bye. Thank you so much. I love her.
She's great. That was
so
great.
Yeah.
Now a word from our sponsor.
What's up, everybody? This is Joey Tacos. Hey, you own an upscale tequila-ria, a Mexican food truck, or a Taco Bell franchise? You may be entitled to damages. My law firm, Tacos and Tacos, attorneys at law, has filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all individuals and all businesses that have the word taco in their name against the parent company of the Financial Times, seeking legal redress for their defamatory association of Donald Trump with the name Tacos. Since President Trump's tariff plan has been called Taco Tariff, where Taco stands for Trump always chickens out by a reporter at Financial Times, my law firm, and every other entity that has the word taco in it has taken a big hit. Once, taco was a word associated with delicious Mexican food, top shelf tequila, and old El Paso. Now, taco is forever associated with the guy currently ruining the global economy. The only way it could get worse is if we rebranded it as Paul Wise. This cannot be allowed to stand. We demand damages, lots of them, and fast. So call 1-555-GO-TACOS, GOTACOS today. That's 1-555-GO-TACOS. And sign on to our class action lawsuit. What we want is what every taco needs. Lots of cheddar. And now, back to the show.
I am joined today by the British former diplomat and the host of the Behind the Lines podcast, the author of the Substack Not All Doom and the book How Britain Broke the World. And his latest book is called Elemental, The New Geography of Climate Change and How We Survive It. Arthur Snell, how are you?
Greg, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fine. So far, I mean, we always, here in the United States, Arthur, we always have to give a little, we gesture to indicate the country on fire and so on. But
yes,
apart from that, I'm okay. I'm hanging in. We were joking on the show on the 5/8 on Friday, because I feel like every time I schedule you to come on to do a podcast, there's a change at 10 Downing Street and something happens to the prime minister. And I keep joking, like, Arthur, you should be the prime minister. Why don't they make you the prime minister? And I feel like they're going to keep doing this until you are the prime minister, in which case I guess maybe you won't come back on the show. I don't know.
I mean, in the very unlikely event that happens, of course, I'm making this solemn promise now, but I will. But yeah, we have so many prime ministers now that I guess everyone sooner or later gets a turn. So I don't know when mine is coming, but
But what's happening though, in all seriousness, because I've lost the plot a little bit. I remember Jason Pack, who you know was on a while ago on my podcast, the Disorder podcast host, and he was saying this was, I think, right after Starmer got elected, that was a good sign for Biden, and that what Britain would do, what the U.S. would follow, and now it seems like Biden fell and now Starmer fell, and it's like this sort of parabola of weirdness. But why was it necessary to remove him? Was he really doing a bad job? And who is replacing him? And is that person better than the recent occupants of the office?
Yeah, good questions. So starting with why did he go? I mean, I think there's two things. One is that we have normalized this now. So I suppose there was a time when you made the assumption that your prime minister was there until the next election or till some other, God forbid they drop dead or whatever. But we've normalized this now. So the moment that the prime minister drops in popularity in the opinion polls or something like that, people get very jumpy. And of course, it's not a presidential system, so that the head of the government is not a directly elected person, and therefore, whilst lots of people understandably say, well, we should have an election, there's no constitutional legal reason that you have to. So that's one answer. And then talk about Keir Starmer. I mean, there are lots of good things about him, and I think even people who really dislike him, they would struggle to say that he was like dishonest or sleazy, or he's a centrist liberal internationalist. He's got a kind of left of center approach to economics. There's lots of things that people on the liberal side of politics would like. And of course, he has a backstory as a prosecutor, as a very, very distinguished lawyer. But he wasn't a good prime minister. And I would say two things about that. It's not just that he was a kind of wooden communicator, because I mean that there have been those in time, and some of them have been great politicians. Albeit, I think the American system with the presidential system does favor more the more flamboyant type of person.
Alas, yes.
But still, I mean, you've had some politicians who I think were creditable. Someone like George H.W. Bush, who might not share his views necessarily, but he was clearly a good man doing his best.
Yes.
And I don't think he was charismatic at all. But anyway. But yeah, so Starmer wasn't charismatic, but I think it went further than that. He was indecisive, and I think that was the real problem. That we are, like many countries, facing a lot of challenges: economic challenges, global challenges with our transatlantic relationship, which is clearly not what it was. Challenges with Russia, all these big questions.
Challenges with climate change.
Challenges with climate change. Thank you for giving me a reason to mention a book called Elemental by Arthur Snell. And somehow Starmer just did not seem to have the ability to look at big challenges and make difficult decisions. So I think it was that combination. And reports started coming out that he'd go into meetings with his advisors and sort of want the meeting just to be over so he wouldn't be asked to make a decision. So I think to me that's, now obviously those reports, they could be exaggerated. I wasn't in the room, I can't confirm that, but they came from credible sources. And I think to me that was the problem, really, that he lacked the skills necessary. And I guess the other point is that if the mainstream politicians don't get organized in Britain, our next prime minister will be Nigel Farage, who is, is the Trumpiest of Trumpy politicians. He is in the pockets of various big businessmen. He was the architect of Brexit. He has talked positively about Putin. I mean, he's every centrist liberal's worst nightmare. So whatever you do, you want to give yourself the best chance of that guy not being prime minister.
Yes, that's true. Although, if Farage is prime minister, I think relations between the United States and the UK would improve.
Well,
So
you're
at least
absolutely
there's
right.
that.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
If
you
your
know,
priority is
silver linings, you know.
yeah, silver linings will be back in Trump's good books, and that's that's another talking about going back to Starmer. He made himself a bit unpopular in the UK by trying very hard to have a good relationship with Trump, and of course I understand why he did that. I'm a former diplomat, as you noted, so and I'm sure that he had to sort of bite his lip. Numerous times every minute he was in the room with Trump, and I bet he didn't enjoy a minute of it. And I respect him for having done it. But even then, Trump was gracious to him for about 20 minutes, and then and now he just kicks him, and it's because Trump is a bully. So you kick the person who's down. He hates. It just seems to be this thing, doesn't he? That the thing he really hates are people who don't win. Even more than their own fundamental beliefs, because he seems to quite like Zoran Mandani, even though that guy's clearly politically in a completely different place to him.
I think he's sort of in love with Mamdani. It's really something.
Romance stuff, So I think anyway, that's why Starmer went. And then to answer your second question, Greg, about who's coming next and what to expect about that. So there's this guy. Well, the first thing to say, nothing's fixed, because, of course, what we're talking about is the Labour Party replacing its leader. And then that person, because that has the majority in the House of Commons, then is the Prime Minister. Because, again, the public get no say. And, of course, some people are understandably a bit unhappy. It was like, well, nobody's voted for this new guy. So Andy Burnham, who, if you've lived in the UK, is a relatively a household name. He was in one of Tony Blair's governments, back in the day, and he was and he ran for the Labour leadership unsuccessfully, and then he went off to Manchester, which is his kind of home territory, obviously north of England, and he was seen as very successful as mayor of Greater Manchester, which is a big area. I should have looked this up before, but it's probably as big as, I don't know, New Jersey or something. It's not New York, but it's a big important place. And so he's got executive experience. Admittedly, the way the system works in the UK, the mayors don't have as much power, for example, as a state governor. But he's done a real job there, and he's, like I say, he's been good at it. And he does have a sort of natural charisma. Keir Starmer will give off the air of being incredibly uncomfortable around the general public, which I think, if you're a politician, is not a very good look. And whereas Burnham has this kind of natural, and he comes from a pretty ordinary background, and there's this idea that people like Farage, a lot of those people in the kind of right-wing populist movement in the UK come from a very privileged background, but they cosplay regular guy, which is, I suppose, what Trump does, doesn't he? That he cosplays, he understands the regular guy, even though he's the most privileged origins you could imagine.
As he's gluing
bits of gold on the fireplace or whatever. So Andy Burnham will not be gluing gold onto any bit of 10 Downing Street. And he's got this kind of normal bloke thing, and people see him playing football with his buddies in the park or whatever. He just he carries that off in a way that seems convincing. And some politicians, poor old Keir Starmer, actually, he came from a relatively humble background, but for some reason he presented as somebody very stiff and formal, and I suppose that often it's nothing to do with your actual background. It's more about your manner. But I think, the big question is not whether he can get a little tiny bounce just because he's new, and normally, people will give you a bit of space when you're new, but can he do anything to make Britain feel like it has a sense of momentum, which is mostly in the economy, but of course in a few other areas as well, and that which will then enable him to confront Nigel Farage, who is actually not very popular. It's a bit like Trump. He has his diehards, he has his base, but a lot of regular people look at him and say, well, you're not a serious person, and you're not, you don't have the qualities that would be necessary to run a country. But But the way the electoral system works and all those things, it's not the same as the US at all. But there are elements of it that you can game a system and be elected on a minority and all the rest of it, and that's the risk with Farage. And we're basically 2 years out. 2.5 years out really from a general election. So Burnham will have to achieve a lot in a short space of time if he's going to shift this battleship in the right
on the other
direction.
hand, it's a low bar right now compared to many of his predecessors.
Right.
So he's got that going for him.
No, that's right. And that's funny because you mentioned, yes, well, how does he compare some of his predecessors? Well, yeah, the bar is very low. And, because Keir Starmer had become so unpopular, and I think a lot of people probably who share a similar worldview that I have looked and couldn't understand why Keir Starmer was so unpopular, but he was. And ultimately, I think there is that thing that when you've kind of lost the country, I guess that's a little bit like what happened with Biden. That
they're very similar.
Point,
they're very, very similar.
He'd lost the country, and it was no good saying, "Well, look at all these things he's done," which were facts. There's data. It was all real. We don't have to make anything up. People say, "I don't care," and to some extent, obviously. Actually, arguably, there is a similarity there in the sense, although you had a presidential system, Biden switched out for someone else. Now, of course, we know the outcome, so the story doesn't have a happy ending. But anyway,
let's hope it doesn't have an unhappy ending there as well. Is there? Because I've heard like this being bandied about various places. Is there any chance that there's going to be a new referendum? And Britain would rejoin the EU? Is that the thing that's maybe going to happen? Or
well, it's so one of the things about Burnham that makes him interesting is that he has consistently said that he believes that we ought, in some time frame, rejoin. And I think one of the ways that Starmer made himself unpopular was that everyone knew from his prior pronouncements, Starmer was very pro-Europe, and then post Brexit. He kept saying, "Well, we've done this now. We can't go back on the question," And actually, we've gone 10 years. Everyone knows it's been a failure. And the other point is the demographic change, so that just as in any country, the population moves on. A huge number of those that voted for Brexit are now dead. They've gone. So why are we doing this stupid thing that would never worked out? Was a narrow margin in the first place, as you know very well, has all kinds of question marks over the role of hostile states.
Mm-hmm.
And so but to answer your question directly, I don't think that could happen in a short term. But what might happen, and this will be a good test of whether Burnham is willing to take these big decisions, because this is one of them really, is there is a kind of halfway house where you join the European market area. And in doing that, it's not a simple choice, because then you have to have an open borders, because you've got to have free movement of labor in order to join. So that's politically complicated. But having said that, what's also politically complicated is our economy has not grown since we left the EU, because basically we've isolated ourselves from our immediate trading relationships. So I think it's a very good example of something that a prime minister has to be willing to level with the public and say, look, you don't like everything about this, but what you really don't like is having an economy that's stuck. And basically Starmer wasn't prepared to do that. He was sort of saying, oh, it's going to be okay, trust the process sort of thing. And no one trusted him, and that was a problem.
Yeah, no, it's also, and he seems very similar to the established Democratic leadership here, who are just so stuck in the past that they can't.
And they tell themselves, well, this worked for Bill Clinton. Why is it not working for me? And say, well, that was another world. We've got to move on.
That was a long time ago. And if you need a template, just look at what Mark Carney is doing and do that.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. He already figured it out.
And particularly if you think about the size of the economy, the necessity to be able to continue to deal with the US whilst not be in the US's pocket, sort of, politically, and also a prime ministerial system. So he's got to run a parliamentary. And in fact, Mark Carney, I think, has a much narrower majority in Parliament than Keir Starmer had. So, Carney has given actually a masterclass in parliamentary politics.
Yeah. And that speech that he gave at whatever it was, Davos that's even in the moment was like one of those history book speeches.
Yes,
or
definitely.
Like it to me.
People will be rereading that for a while. Yeah.
So, okay, moving on. Thank you for all of that. I really, every time you come, you have to update us on these.
On the madness of British politics. Yeah.
Even though it's not what we planned, when we booked this, not even that long ago. So,
no.
But we're here really to talk about your book, which is excellent. It could also be called Not All Doom, by the way. I figure that could also be a title of the book.
The book of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. The actual title is Elemental, the New Geography of Climate Change and How We Survive It. And the way that it's structured I know you know this, but for people listening, is you break it down kind of into the 4 elements, the earth, wind, fire, water. And, you kind of put things in those categories and explain it. And there's so much depth and detail here. And you bring in a lot about yourself and your own experiences. Obviously, you've lived in a lot of different places. You've visited a lot of places that most people have not been to. And that is, I think, important to understand. And you come at it from a real place of authority because you've been to these places that are going to lose all the water and the temperature is going to be 150 degrees and it's not going to be livable and all this kind of stuff. But it's also, I remember when I first heard that you were publishing this book thinking, oh, this is what I'm curious about, because where are we going? Like, I get the science of it, which is ultimately to me kind of boring. Like I know, like 3 degrees Celsius, that doesn't mean anything to me. That seems like that. So, but I want to know, like, when this happens, what can we expect? What are the drivers? What are the factors? What are the forces? What are the dangers? Which places are going to be impacted more than other places? And that's what the book is. And it's really, really impressive. So first of all, just great job with it. It's really remarkable. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I'm really glad that you kind of took that side of it, because basically I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't dream of saying the science is boring, but you know what I mean, that it doesn't, for a lot of people, that being told that this many parts per million of CO2 or that the temperature's gone doesn't kind of mean anything. And what I wanted to do was write a book that tries to talk to people about the world as they understand it and how that changes. And I hopefully that's what the book is.
Yeah, no, you do exactly that. And I think it's hard to read in the sense of, it's scary, but it's not hard to read in the sense that it is very well written. So, it cruises along and all that stuff. But now I know you write about this in the book, but what was the inspiration for writing this book at this time?
Yeah, so it sort of begins with a mountain climbing trip that I went on about 20 years ago. In the French Alps, Swiss Alps, sorry, in Europe. And obviously we're talking alpine mountains with glaciers and rocks and all that. And there was a big avalanche, a rock fall, which was very dangerous and nearly sort of crushed me under a boulder. Happily, we came out in one piece. But basically what I'd realized at that point was the way that this shifting climate is destabilizing like enormous parts of our landscape in a way that it's not just, oh, it's a bit hotter this year, or I don't know, the wine this year is a bit more expensive, or the number of places that you can grow this thing or whatever. It's something much more fundamental, or dare I say elemental. And actually just in the case study of mountains, the way this affects people. So like, one case study last summer in 2025 in Switzerland, a small town had to be abandoned because of a collapsing glacier just obliterated the town. Now, happily, the people knew in advance, so nobody was hurt. But this is just an example of how this shifting climate is changing our world. And if you think of these things happening in different places all over the world, and sort of the agglomeration of these effects, this is how our world is shifting in radical ways, and even, of course, in rich countries that in some cases think that they're kind of immune from this stuff. And we could think about Florida or parts of the kind of Gulf Coast of America, where rising sea levels, intense hurricanes, things like that will have an enormous impact.
Or in the, down in Arizona, Nevada, like that part of the world, all these people are moving for some reason. And it's like the river's drying up.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have this depopulation. I mean, not of New York, I know, but of places like Cleveland, Ohio, or whatever. And people, we're off to the south and we're going to go and live in Arizona or Florida or whatever. And honestly, I think these people are making a terrible 20 years from now, these places are going to be very hard to live in.
You live on the coast of one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world, but let's go to the desert. That's right. And I remember there's some sort of agreement and treaty between the states of that river that's almost expired. It's going to be a shit show down there.
Yeah,
it's going to be an absolute shit show. But what's remarkable, and one of the takeaways for me from the book is how intertwined everything is. Like the climate really, like one tends to think of it, and by one I mean me, as just sort of, just okay, it's a little hotter, it's a little this, but climate affects everything. Because it affects the food supply, that affects territory and terrain and minerals, and therefore war and defense, and it affects health too, which is something you talk about a little bit in the book historically. You talk about the plague of Justinian, our Byzantine guy Justinian, and how that kind of was caused by bad weather and failed crops, and the Black Death was the same thing. There was a lot of really bad famines, and then by the time that generation came of age, the temperatures were a little less, and the marmot moved slightly in its Siberian trail, and the next thing you know, Crimea is a shit show, and a third of the population of Europe is dead, because they weren't hardy enough to survive it, because they had been malnourished. So everything is all
it's all
interconnected. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, certainly the thing, and so what I found when I was, because a bit like you, I had this view about, well, the climate crisis is there, have to think about it, maybe not fly long haul as much as I used to, or something, in the way that you try and put it in a space in your brain. And then when you start researching it, you see it comes everywhere. So another case study in the book is where Vladimir Putin, in the run up to the invasion of Ukraine, he's complaining that the Ukrainians are kind of mismanaging their agricultural land, which, of course, as far as he's concerned, Ukraine is basically just an expansion of Russia. So he's sort of affronted that the Ukrainian approach to its agriculture doesn't cohere to his worldview, and of course, then after the invasion, what we saw was Putin handing out some of this prime land in the occupied parts of Ukraine that the Russians have occupied to some of his top oligarchs, these sort of big people in agribusiness sector in Russia. And it made me think it's just like the kind of medieval kings like William the Conqueror invaded England and handed out land to his barons. It's not much has changed. But what's the climate part of this? Well, actually, as you mentioned, food is one of the things that gets impacted. So as the climate crisis makes it harder to maintain the productivity of agriculture, then of course you want more productive land, and so maybe you go and invade Ukraine.
It's everything ties together, and at the end of the day, just like William the Conqueror, it's just a land grab, it's just a power grab, because you're trying to protect your people at the expense of everybody else. And to combat climate change, to truly combat it, which is a point you make again and again in the book, it really will require the entire world coming together and working towards something, which, there's been examples of this before, like with the ozone layer, like with how India and Pakistan agreed to share the river rights and stuff like that. Like there are examples of this working where people are, it's not impossible. It's just
unusual.
It doesn't usually happen. Right. Let's go through element like fire. You talk a lot about fire, and obviously that's one section of the book. One of the things the quotes that struck me, somebody you spoke to, who was what are they called? Fire jumpers?
A smoke jumper. Yeah.
Smoke jumpers.
In the US, in Idaho, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're saying, well, we know that we can't do anything about hurricanes, and we know we can't do anything about tsunamis. And why do people think we could do anything about these big fires? Because we really can't.
Absolutely. And I think fires are an interesting one for North America, particularly because obviously it is still a very richly forested continent. And you're absolutely right that there is this sort of expectation, I guess, because if there's a fire in a house, you call the fire department and they put it out. And there's this sort of idea that a fire in a wild forest, it must be containable, right? And no, it isn't. And actually, I mean, obviously we saw that with the Palisades fire in Los Angeles, the beginning of last year. But but we're going to see more and more of this, and this thing about wildfires, because it's not just about the state of the forest itself drying out, but actually more extreme weather driving it. So very, very high winds, for example, which then pushes a fire to move a very high speed. So yeah, it's one of the major sort of issues that will confront us in our future. And interestingly, that the wildfires are now on their own contributing significantly to the global warming. And so, because it used to be that obviously the greenhouse gases were caused by humans traveling around, industrial activity, all that, not from nature. But now wildfires are becoming part of that problem.
Yeah. Great. It's something else to worry about. It's wonderful. The thing that concerns me the most, though, and you saved this for last, I think wisely, because we build to it like in the horror movie, is the water.
Yes,
because it's always that's something I'm able to grasp, I think, better. Like we need water. Everybody has to have water to drink to survive, and water crops and all this other kind of stuff. And there is a finite amount of water, or fresh water anyway. Can the population get to the point where there just simply isn't enough water on Earth? Or I don't know. The whole thing you're writing about, not just cities like Alexandria in Egypt that will eventually just wind up underneath the sea, but also places like London, which could potentially run out of water to the sense where you go to the spigot and turn it and nothing comes out. And that's just all she wrote. That seems like really terrifying to me. Like, what are we doing about that?
It's interesting, isn't it? So you have this thing of, yes, of course, that there's the question about water as a threat. So whether it's particularly rising sea levels, but of course in other cases, catastrophic flooding from rivers. And again, because extreme weather. So, there was, I think, was it in Alabama, or there was some tragedies around the time of the presidential election, because I remember it was weaponized by the Trump people claiming that the aid had been sent to Ukraine, or just some nonsense. But so you'll see that, but particularly rising sea levels, and there are billions of people around the world who live at about 1 to 2 meters above sea level. So that's a major issue. But then this thing about drinking water, and so there have been some cases of cities basically the taps ran dry and they've had emergency responses, and often they've just been saved by luck. So that the taps, so Chennai in India, tens of millions of people live there. Tehran, actually, in Iran. I mean, they've had so many other things going on, but that is and was a major issue. But yes, we're getting to the point where even what we might call rich world cities, and London. I mean, everybody thinks, well, what happens in London when it rains all the time? So what the hell's going on? Why are we running out of water? So some of it is a lack of investment. So there's absolutely no reason that you couldn't provide fresh water for Londoners, but successive water authorities have basically been lazy about it because they've thought, well, we're okay. But of course, the population grows, but also people use more and more water. Our grandparents probably, took a bath once a week or something, and we're showering twice a day. So stuff like that is a major difference. And you're not going to persuade people not to shower twice a day. So you can do things to manage wastewater and be more efficient and all that kind of stuff. But the challenges of fresh water, and so what goes with that is then people starting to build dams, and what you call transboundary river basins. So just when the river crosses an international boundary, then it gets complicated. And of course, that there are places in the world where wars have started, or at least they've got very close to starting because of these sorts of disputes. Now, you mentioned already, Greg, there's a good counter study, which is India and Pakistan, where they, in spite of all the problems that those two countries have had and many wars and all the other stuff, they've actually managed to collaborate quite sensibly with water. That's just, and maybe it's because it's so existential that they don't want to go there. It's almost like it's a thing that no sane person would do. But you'll note I said sane. Donald Trump, he's always threatening to blow up the water supply in Iran, isn't he? And so that a future where countries build dams. I mean, so the China, if you think of like the Himalayan mountains, the Tibetan plateau, that's basically one of the most important bits of water, of fresh water in the world with all the glaciers, and of course it feeds the great nations of Asia, China, India, Pakistan. Billions of people are reliant on that water, and China is starting to take a more aggressive approach, building dams high up in the mountains, which then denies water or certainly restricts and limits water supply downstream. So things like that, can have catastrophic impacts. But I think that the final area, of course, of water is the Arctic. The whole story of Trump wanting to steal Greenland is really a water story, because it's about the polar ice cap melting. And so that the whole way the Arctic goes from having been literally but also geopolitically frozen to now becoming this contested zone. And this is not me saying that Trump was right. Obviously, the guy's an idiot. But there was this kind of kernel of truth about something around Arctic security. Ironically, I don't think Greenland was the issue. I think there's a place called Svalbard, which is kind of on the level with Greenland, but further east, due north.
Which you visited. You visited.
Which I visited, yeah. And the Russians have already got a foothold there. And that's on a bit of NATO territory. It's quite weird. And it's one of these sort of it's a kind of anomaly due to an old treaty. They had a base there and they never shifted. And that's a place that could be a flashpoint for a future war. And it's because of the climate that these things can happen.
Yeah, it's terrifying too, how that's going to be. And in theory, anyway, people will move farther north, and the lands further north that are now maybe a little bit less arable become more so, which benefits Russia and China and Canada.
And Canada,
yeah. And us, because we have Alaska.
That's true. Yeah, you have Alaska, and also, I mean, I guess I don't know, but I guess places like sort of North Dakota become a bit more manageable. I don't know.
But nothing will make people move.
Nothing on it. Yeah.
Let's not go too crazy. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things that was fascinating in the book is you're talking about people trying to control the weather. Yeah. Both historically and, like the Roman emperors going to their, people who looked at the chickens and
the chickens pecking the sort of predicting the weather from how the chickens would peck the grain. Yeah.
Which is actually probably more accurate than it sounds.
That's right. It's not crazy. Yeah. Listeners will just have to read my book. I assure you there is a kind of method in what seems like a very quaint ancient world madness.
Yeah. I mean, birds have they're more attuned to the climate than anything else. So watching the bird, like even thinking to do that is actually kind of brilliant.
Quite ingenious.
Yeah. But now what people are trying to do is what's called geoengineering. They're not trying to do it. They're contemplating doing it. Yeah. Which involves, basically getting rid of the CO2 in the atmosphere or reversing it by putting sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. And there's so many problems or challenges with doing that. Starting with once we start doing it, we pretty much can't ever stop. Or else everything's going to get hot all at once, and it'll be even worse than how it is now. But this is a real thing that people are contemplating. Are we really going to try to do this? And can it work? Do you think it can work? Is there any way it can work?
Well, I from what I've read and looked at, the evidence that it can work in terms of cooling the planet is that it can, yes. But what you don't know is what are the side effects. So in fact, when we talked earlier about some of these earlier periods of cooler weather, what caused that? It tended to be volcanic eruptions, which puts lots of particles into the air, which basically restricts the sun's heat. And what this technology we're talking about is kind of the same idea. It's an artificial version of a volcanic dust cloud that limits the sun's the energy of the sun reaching us on Earth.
What can go wrong?
Yeah, he's right. and so going back to those periods of Byzantine history, which I know you're passionate about, Greg. Crops failed, so it got cooler, but it also got drier, for example. So that's a thing that happened. So there's loads that could go badly wrong. And so one would like to say, and for that reason, we know no one will try it. But obviously, we don't necessarily live in that world. And then there's this point about, yes, it's a kind of a bit like maybe a drug that someone has to take for a health condition. But then they know that they're going to have to take it forever, because if they come off the drug, the condition returns in a more intense way. So that's pretty tough, because this is planet Earth. Can we do this forever? Or can we do it and then radically reverse all the other stuff? So there's the putting the sulfur dioxide particles in the air, restricting the sun's heat. If you could combine that with this, what they call direct air capture, which is like literally sucking the carbon dioxide out of the excess carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. But I mean, that's kind of beyond where science is at the moment. But it's quite an interesting question for a sort of science fiction, speculative fiction question, because then you also have questions about maybe 20, 30 years from now, if there's like an absolute extreme heat that is killing people on a huge scale, maybe a country would just do it and say, we've just got to do this now, a kind of unilateral action. And again, obviously you can understand why an individual country might decide to do that, but it's very complicated, because then what if it causes the rain cycle to fail in some neighboring country or whatever? You can imagine that some of the dilemmas that would come up as a result of this.
Yeah, it's I've always thought, I guess, in the back of my head, and I'm sure that I'm not alone, that at some point things will get so bad that everybody will be like, oh, we're gonna have to pay attention to this now, and then we'll just sort of snap to and figure it out. I put a lot of faith in our smart people figuring this out.
Right.
So one of the things in your book is that smart people are figuring this out.
Yeah,
and maybe have figured it out, and it's just a matter of implementing a lot of the things. So
I think most of the technology we need is already with us. So we were talking now about quite speculative stuff, but the basic stuff like solar energy, wind, we all know that Donald Trump is obsessed with windmills, but they do work. They generate electricity. They're very cheap now. So solar and wind energy are cheap, and that's really interesting that they're basically cheaper than burning gas or most other forms of generation. And of course, then there's other, depending on where you are, hydroelectric power, tidal power. There's all kinds of other ways that you can generate power without burning fossil fuels. I mean, that's the basic thing, is you can generate power without setting fire to something, you're winning. And so the technology exists. And in fact, as you know, I wouldn't normally do this, but I quote Elon Musk of all people, who pointed out that 100 miles square of territory of solar panels would power the entire United States, which is the world's greatest economy, huge power consumption. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put it all in one place. Why? That wouldn't make sense. It's vulnerable. But we all know that in your great country, there's a lot of empty space, as
there
you know.
is.
And so that's what we're not talking about, some crazy thing where you're going to have to change everything about how we live. But you're right. I mean, how bad does it have to get? So interestingly, we were talking just before I came on air about how we've had this heat wave in Europe, but it's almost a sort of scarily high level of heat. And a lot of, as you'll know, a lot of European buildings don't have air conditioning, because particularly in Northern Europe, you sort of think, well, it's not really necessary. And so already people in large parts of Northern Europe are, I think, starting to rethink some of their assumptions. But there is that risk that, well, if we just get a heat wave for 10 days and then, by October it's windy and rainy again, maybe we're just going to kind of forget and not do anything about it.
I don't know. But it seems like these things are happening more consistently. And you point out,
no, they are. And they're happening more and more often.
100-year flood that happens every 5 years now.
Right. And when you see the heat record and you think, well, I wonder what record are we breaking? Well, it's only 2 years ago, whereas it used to be that it hasn't happened since your grandfather was alive or whatever. And I think, and obviously you don't wish a natural disaster on anyone, but I think particularly in America, where you do have this problem with climate denialism, mostly on the right, mostly as part of the wider MAGA movement, if some terrible disaster befalls a major city in Florida, is Ron DeSantis still going to pretend that the climate crisis isn't real? I don't know. He might, but I would have thought a lot of his voters might say, actually, we're done with this. We need you to start taking it seriously.
I mean, the thing that's, you mentioned Florida, the thing that's crazy about these people, these Republicans in charge, is that they know damn well that it's
Of
real.
course. Yeah. Of course.
DeSantis, before he decided that it wasn't real, in fact, was pretty good on the environment in Florida, and had policies in place to help bring back this river that actually my boss was involved with funding the project to do that, to bring the river back from the brink of contamination. And DeSantis was, at least at the beginning, pretty good on that. And but now he can't be, because Trump decided it's not
real. Yeah.
You know, if God forbid, if anytime a guy like that is leading us off the cliff, we have to go with him. Yeah. So this is a good segue into the United States discussion. Obviously, we're being run by Trump, who we've talked about him enough, but what's scarier than that is the fact that enough people in the United States elected this guy a second time, knowing everything that they knew about him, and having the record from the first term, which was so awful to look at and compare. So we have this, and I think the number is going down, maybe a little bit, but it's still a significant percentage of the population that still thinks this guy is swell. And then his entire party, which has the ability to get rid of him at any time and always has, which has just sat down on the job and will not do anything unless it's basically something that is inherently self-defeating. We're spending all of our resources going around and terrorizing our immigrant population, which is also, as you found out after Brexit, drives the economy with labor. We don't make it. We don't. The reason the Elon Musk people are so worried about the domestic infant supply, so-called, is because they know that we're not, the population isn't increasing enough to support and sustain the economy. We depend on, in the United States, immigration to grow
as
the
we
economy.
Do in Europe.
Yeah. It's just how it works. And all of the money's going to that and God knows what we're doing in Iran. I mean, that's just a words fail to describe how stupid that is. But at some point, theoretically, we will be rid of this guy, and we will have someone not him in charge. What do you seem very, very not bullish about the United States in the book at the end, and with good reason. But what should we be doing? What policies should we be putting in place? What should we prioritize? Like, just talk about it a little bit in general. How do you see us now, and what can we do to get out of it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that if you were going to make the bull case for the United States, clearly what you still have is you have innovation, you have all the best scientists, you have the best universities, and you have a economy that, when it wants to, can put finance behind things that are worth doing. And, we're seeing this AI revolution, which that's another debate. Whether it proves good for humanity, we don't know yet. But
we do. It doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree. But yeah, so there's no reason why the US couldn't completely dominate the renewable energy revolution and the transition from hydrocarbon energy. Unfortunately, you seem to have a political leadership, and of course that's embedded with big oil and the sort of related industrial sectors. And I don't want to sound like some conspiracy guy in a bar, but it's true, and actually, something that people forget is that the US, not very long ago, US oil and gas production had dropped quite low. So around the turn of the millennium, it was really quite low relative to a lot of other countries, and it has grown massively. So the growth of that sector, the oil rush was not back in Texas in the 18 something or others. It's in the last 20 years, and so. And it's no surprise in a way. There's the impact, all that money that is flowing through the system, which is dependent on this hydrocarbon economy. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason why the US couldn't reverse that, because you have the technology, you have, as I say, you have an economy that's good at supporting innovation. Also, you've got space. That's quite important. Coming back to the thing about like solar panels, people get antsy if you put solar panels in a natural beauty spot near a national park, but you've got a big country with relatively low population density. So I think there are loads of things that the US could do. When you talk about what are the policies, I mean, I think The problem is, there were some good policies there that the Biden government had put in, and Trump has reversed them all. And of course, for him, everything with him is about a form of retribution, isn't it? That he takes great pleasure from tearing up something that was either an Obama or a Biden policy, but clearly having targets, whether it's emissions targets. There's this terrible irony, isn't there, that the electric vehicle revolution was really the work of Elon Musk until about 2 years ago, at which point the Chinese kind of surged ahead. Now, obviously, Musk turns out to be a fascist and somebody that we would, perhaps not particularly want to see get rich. But before Teslas, no one believed that EVs were going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And that's an example of what America can do. But because of all the other factors, America no longer leads the EV economy, and it's now completely dominated by China. Not just in terms of volumes, but actually in innovation. The new EVs they're making are way better than the Teslas, and that was totally not the case even 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, the Chinese seem to be so far ahead. That's the other takeaway from the book, that it's almost an insurmountable lead at this point.
Yeah.
Although, if we've learned nothing else by watching the New York Knicks, which is something else we have in the United States, no lead is too big, Arthur. No lead is too big.
No, you are right. And I think the sporting analogy is not a bad one, because you don't. I would hesitate not. Hesitate not to. Well, let me do this again. I would hesitate to write off the US, basically, because the record of sort of coming up trumps again and again. That's an unfortunate turn of phrase, but you know what I mean, is very strong. But it just feels to me this time around that the politics has become so toxic that actually that no one can sustain anything. The one thing you need is a sustained policy. So let's all hope and pray that, I don't know, President Newsom comes in, or other people may have views, but a Democrat president sweeps away. J.D. Vance proves unelectable. He looks unelectable. He behaves unelectable. So that's no shock. And we're allowed to count the votes properly. J.D. Vance is history. There's a Democrat president. They say we've got to get serious on the climate crisis, but also actually it's a strategic necessity because China is outstripping us. This isn't about hugging trees and rare types of owls or whatever, which it will help them too. So it's not bad for that, but it's a strategic necessity. And then 4 years later, if you get some Republican in and they rip it all up, that's the real issue, that this kind of sustained policy making, which again, the US used to be quite good at because of a bipartisan approach, has just gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. And this is the last question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because like I said, this is there's a lot of facts in the book that are dispiriting, let us say. And I know how this goes. I write about dispiriting things all the time. But how do you, Arthur, maintain your own sense of hope about all of this? Is there some secret?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. I think I come back to the point I made earlier about the technology being there. So it's not like that bit at the beginning of the pandemic where there was this disease, we had no cure and it was killing people. It's the bit where we got the vaccine. And so actually there's a way to deal with this. Now, of course, there's also idiots who say don't take the vaccine. You've got all that nonsense. But the fundamental question is, are we living in the shadow of COVID anymore? No, we're not. And because of human ingenuity, and we got a vaccine, people were saying it's going to take 10 years. It didn't. It took 24 months or less. Was it 18 months? So that's a great example. The technology exists. The other thing I think is that there are lots of examples where actually these shifts are happening just because of economic good sense. So particularly in developing countries where perhaps there was less electricity installed just because of less developed economies, they're installing renewable energy because it's the cheapest and the quickest way to do it. So you're having this energy transformation. Trump might hate windmills, but most people are like, I like windmills. It's cheap. It gives me electricity straight away. It's reliable. It's simple. It's way simpler than burning gas to turn that into electricity. So I think that there's lots of things like that which give cause for hope. clearly we've done too little too late, but that doesn't mean that we can't still do things now. So I think that's one part of it. And I guess the other part is, why you and me got to know each other. That in the end, you find the people who are trying to do the right thing, and you work with them and hope that eventually, in a small way, your own individual efforts add up to something a bit bigger overall.
Yeah. Well said. So again, your book is called Elemental: The New Geography of Climate Change and How We Survive It. Arthur Snell, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
Drain the reflecting pool, I want it painted blue. As blue as tidy bowl dissolved into the loo. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. Burn all the Epstein files so nobody knows. The big bruise on my hand looks like it's painted blue. Find me a body double like Netanyahu. I see the bottleneck at the Straits of Hormuz. Iran is uglier than the wife of Ted Cruz. The gilded Oval Office glitters like fool's gold. MAGA stupidity is shocking to behold. One day I'll fall asleep and I'll never come to. Until then everyone feels like they're painted blue. Drain the reflecting pool, I want it painted blue. The country's in the red, so we must paint it blue. I see the girls go by dressed in their summer clothes. Burn all the Epstein files so nobody knows. Hey, I wanna see it painted. Painted blue, painted blue. As blue as my lips, as blue as the sky.
Are you ready?
No.
Get ready.
Hold on. Oh, this is not going to work right. Hold on a second. Am I ready? Wait, I'm still not ready. I'm still not ready.
Are you ready, everybody?
Okay, we're ready.
Fifth. One more.
Okay, fifth.
Listen, all I know is as long as I hang out with you, buddy,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna get through it.